Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session of the Wealth Metrics podcast, where we try to help investors to see how they can scale their business from the level they are now to another level. Today, we have an amazing guy, somebody who has done so much in his industry and also in our own industry. I so much admire the work that he has done. We are having with us here Will Moore. Will Moore is a serial entrepreneur. He's a speaker, he's a life coach, and he's a happiness expert who is here to tell us a little bit about how we can use our habits to create momentum. Will Moore is somebody who started a business from scratch called the delivery business, and in the end he sold this particular business for $323 million in 2019. And ever since, he has been doing so many things about happiness. And is somebody who has actually given out his life to see how we can make people happy, how people can turn their failures into success. My name is James Egodibe, and I'm the host of this World Metrics Virtual Summit. Today, we have this amazing guy with us, Will Moore. Will Moore, you are welcome, and thank you so much for accepting the invite to speak to our wonderful audience. Will, before we dive onto the questions, I just want you to tell our audience a little bit about yourself, your background, how you started, and so that they can relate with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much for having me. Super excited to be here. Basically I've got a story just like everybody else. Everybody's got the where they came from. I was born in California, Pasadena, California. I moved to Honolulu, Hawaii when I was 2 years old. We lived there till I was 7. My parents were hippies, so they were very, not your traditional kind of, 9 to 5 types. And, but my grandfather was actually a general in World War II. So my mom came from that background, but then kind of went the opposite way. And, we didn't have a lot of money growing up, and we lived in kind of a bad area of Hawaii. People probably don't think about that. There's bad areas in Hawaii, but there are, not bad, I shouldn't say, but less affluent. And my sister and I were the only white kids in the school. It was all locals. And we were the Howleys, they called us. And I spoke Pidgin, which is the local language there. Howleys is sort of slang for like white outsiders. Yeah. And so then we moved to Bethesda, Maryland, DC. My parents got divorced early. My mom was actually an alcoholic, and she had some issues with her temper and whatnot. And we moved to California, to Washington, DC, Bethesda, Maryland, when I was 7. And I was, again, kind of an outsider because I didn't really fit in, because I had this long hair and I spoke Pidgin, and people were like, who is this kid, this hippie kid? So by the time I got to college, I got picked on. I was bullied a lot. I never really found my rhythm. By the time I got to college, I was sort of your typical victim, sure that life was out to get me, and there was nothing I could do about it. I serendipitously discovered a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Mr. Dale Carnegie. I'm sure you and a lot of your listeners are familiar with it. Yeah. Written all the way back in the 30s. It's a perfect example of a book that still holds up today, because absolutely universal principles, and you can't cheat the system, right? So these principles have been around since the beginning of time. They're going to be around till the end. You can try to find workarounds or try to cheat it, but you can't. And at the end of the day, they'll catch up to you. And so it all comes down to habits. And it just kind of hit me that day. Like, I want to change the trajectory of my life. I want to change the habits that I've built, that I've developed, because they're awful and they're hurting me. And I want to start moving in the opposite direction. So that's what I did. And I started kind of reinventing myself, reading more self-help books, trying out different things, habits. And over the years, just sort of slowly but surely, I gained that momentum, and I was able to, on the career and finance side, build a restaurant delivery service, which is called Doorstep Delivery. Started from scratch, grabbed my buddy, said, hey, this seems like a good idea. Let's do it. and just slowly started improving it, ended up growing it into 19 branches. We had thousands of drivers.
Wow.
So it's similar to like an Uber or a Grubhub was basically the concept. But we actually started it before, or DoorDash, as people know, just IPO'd a couple days ago. We started before those guys. We just didn't raise money like they did. So they when they did come about 8 years into our business, we knew we couldn't really compete with them because they have billions of dollars behind them, and they're trying to gain market share, losing money hand over fist. So we decided we needed to exit in some form or fashion. So we ended up, I actually reached out to a gentleman who had a company, a similar size company as us, called Bite Squad, out of Minneapolis, and we basically merged our companies together. We raised money to start buying some of these smaller companies that were out there and essentially dominate the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, as they're called, which aren't the main cities like the New Yorks, the LAs, the Chicagos, but more of like the Nashvilles, the Orlandos, the Tampas of the world, right? And so we did that, and we grew and we expanded, and we got big enough to get on the radar of a company called Waiter Holdings out of Louisiana, who purchased us last year, who closed in February for a combined $323 million.
Wow. What a story. And I mean, somebody like you who started a business from the scratch and grew it to the extent of selling it for 323 million, that's a feast. And another thing that I noticed about you, Will, is you have devoted so much of your time and energy into studying habits and how we can use our habit to create momentum for our success. That's why I'm so happy about you coming to talk to our audience about this habits and using it to create momentum. So let's just dive into the questions. The first thing is, habit is something that is so difficult to change, extremely difficult to change once somebody gets into the habit. If you want to tell our audience today, what is the best way for them to start off changing their bad habits to a good habit?
Great question. So first, let me, to help put that in context, let me back up and talk briefly about habits. Habits don't care if they're good or bad, helping or hurting us. There are these things that we do that at some point in our lives, we just started doing, whether it was because somebody else that we admired did them, or our peers or society or media. You know, we have all these influences, but at some point we thought, okay, we started taking this action. We repeated that action over time, and that action became a habit, and it was kind of on autopilot, right? So it doesn't care again if it's helping or hurting. And so we've developed a lot of these, what I call failure habits, bad habits, failure habits that are on autopilot that are hurting us. And I have these I kind of break down everybody's lives into these 5 main areas, these 5 cores, right? So we've got our mindset, then we've got our career and our relationships, our career and finances, then we have our relationships, then we have our physical health, and then we have our emotional health and giving back. And these are 5 main areas. We need to continue to look at the habits that we have in each of them and say, okay, what are the bad habits I've developed that are causing me negative momentum? And how do I replace these with success habits, building positive momentum? So the first step is to become aware. So I actually have people do an exercise, which is, there's actually on my website at www.momentum.com. There's a little free life core evaluator quiz that you can take, which is kind of neat. So basically what that is you just to answer a few questions, and it will show you where you currently stand in each of your cores and what maybe, and it has some habit questions in there. So you start to see, okay, I'm on a scale of 1 to 5. I'm giving myself a 2 in physical health. I'm giving myself a 4 in relationships. I'm giving myself whatever it is. And then that'll quickly show you like where you want to start, like what's the weakest area. So let's say, you know, your relationships was your lowest one and it's at a 2. You say, okay, that's where I want to start. And then I have this exercise that I help people with where I basically have them do their funeral list. It sounds a little morbid, but I essentially say, what do you want said about you at your funeral in each of these 5 areas? And now let's reverse engineer that and say, okay, where do you currently stand, and are you on track to have that said about you at your funeral? And if not, what habits do you currently have that you need to change to do so?
Wow. Awesome. Awesome. Yes. And that's so, so good. And I also like the way you have broken this down into 5 different levels. How long does it take one to change from failure habits to a success habit?
So there's no magic number. Every habit is different. And so some habits you might be able to, like flossing, for instance. I would say I didn't floss for years. And that's an example of a habit in your physical health core. That's helping you build your physical health, becoming, taking care of your body, which ties to your mind, all this stuff. And so that took me probably, I used to go to the dentist all the time, and he was like, oh, you got great teeth for years. And then it wasn't until one day I finally walked in, I had a cavity. I was like, okay. And he was always like, you're flossing, right? And I was like, nah, yeah, kind of. And then it wasn't until he said that and I had the cavity, I was like, okay, I need to start flossing every day. So it's about faking it till you make it is kind of how I look at it. So I forced myself, I set an alarm to floss every night. At first I hated it because it wasn't part of my routine. I was like, this is annoying. So again, habits don't care if they're good or bad, but I was in the habit of not doing it. So there's that front loaded work that I had to do to unclench it from my brain and say, okay, we're not going to do it that way anymore. We're going to do it this way. And so it probably took, 2 to 3 weeks until I was doing it every day. And then what happens is it's a magical process. It goes on automatic pilot. So I don't need the alarm anymore. I don't need to remind myself at night. I know that that's part of my routine.
Yeah.
And that's when it gets cool, because then that habit's kind of over here. And it's like, okay, now he's working for me instead of against me. And I didn't really have I don't have to put too much thought into it. So that's what you want to kind of do. And every habit again is different. So that was one example. Stopping negative thinking might be a harder battle. That would be a mindset.
Yeah.
Rubber band or something. Go ahead.
Yeah, that actually leads to my second point that I wanted you to touch on. The way you classified it into the mindsets, the relationship, the career, the health. Mindset is big. A lot of people have negative mindsets, negative thoughts that is actually hindering them. How do they break away from this negative thought and turn it into a positive thought?
So yeah, your mindset it's the biggest of all the cores. If you don't have your mindset going for you, it's almost impossible to gain momentum in the other areas of your life as well. So I always start with people on their mindset. And the way I look at mindset, it's your attitude, it's your confidence, it's your perception on life. Like, is the glass half full? Like you were saying, are you negative? Always, are you positive? Are you a victim, or as I call a fixed victim in life versus a growth owner? So a fixed victim is somebody who, poor me, I'm born the way I am, my brain's broken, there's nothing I can really do about it. Hopefully one day somebody will save me, I'll hit the lottery. And they expect everything to be done for them because they're not capable of doing it. Versus the growth owner, which is like, okay, I was born a certain way, I've got weaknesses, but I've also got a lot of strengths. I'm going to figure out how to work around my weaknesses, outsource them, whatever. I'm going to focus on my strengths. I'm going to harness that and set goals and basically not stop until I get to where I'm going. And there's going to be obstacles along the way that are temporary roadblocks, but I'm just going to push through them. I'm going to fail forward. If something bad happens, I'm going to say, how did I learn from it? How can I grow from it? So that's everything, right? It's also giving fear the finger, like being like, okay, this is an opportunity to grow. I'm scared of this, and I'm going to push through it because I know that I will become a bigger, better, faster, smarter person because of it.
Wow. Yes. Another question I just want to ask you is, there are times in life that we know we have these bad habits, we have this negative mindset, And we've learned from people like you who are trying to turn things around for good for us. But we start off 1, 2, 3 days into the process. Majority of the people tend to go back to their old habits because it's comfortable.
Right.
How do you help such people not to that progress that they've started?
So that's part of what I'm trying to do is create a system, and it's a gamified, fun system. So I have this app that I'm developing that'll hopefully be ready in the next 5 to 6 months, and it makes it fun to hold yourself accountable with these habits. So what it is in the morning, you'll start very slow. You'll start with one core. You'll start with one habit that's the most important. You want to prioritize them that you know is hurting you the most in life, and you're this rocket ship, and you've got these 5 cylinders of your engines that are actually all 5 of your cores. And the idea is you want to continually build momentum in each of these cores to be able to fly to the next planet, the next galaxy. There'll be little asteroid fields you'll navigate through, and all this is happening, and it's making it fun, and you're adding that element of wanting to improve, because then you want to see, okay, what's the next planet? Who's the next little alien I'm going to meet? Who's, you know, what's the planet going to look like? How can I upgrade my ship? So it's taking the habits, and it's turning it into an accountability system that's fun and reduces the friction.
Yeah, and if it's fun, it tend to give people that leeway to just continue with it. Do you have like a step-by-step process that you think people can go through that will help them in this journey of actually creating momentum in their progress?
Yes. So the app will guide you through and walk you through it, and starting small. So you start with one habit and one core. And then as you develop that and you gain momentum, it'll unlock the next habit you can do. And then you can work on up to 3 habits at one time on each core. And then you can start unlocking your other cores and start working on those as well. And eventually the idea is you want to be firing on all cylinders. You want to have all 5 cores going, and you want to be working on habits in each. And that's when you're really gaining momentum and doing well.
Great. I will be looking forward to your app coming out as well. And our audience that are listening to this, let's just keep an eye on that app, because I'm sure it's going to really, really make us change our habit. Real estate is something that most people are into or want to get into, but they have this fear because some of them thinks real estate is too risky, or they don't have enough funds, they don't have enough knowledge, and all these are negative thoughts that limit people or prevents them from getting to where they need to get to. What advice will you give to people in that category?
Yeah, I mean, so real estate, just like any other fear, like I was saying earlier, you know, there's got to be some risk. There's risk and reward in life, and you know, you want to take calculated risks. But if you don't do anything and you just, you know, say, oh, I should do that, and then all of a sudden it's the end of your life, like I was saying, that funeral list. Like if on your funeral list, your career and finances, you say, okay, I want to have made X amount of dollars. I want to have, this is what my house will look like. This is what my, you know, whatever, you know, you're visioning that. And then you're going, okay, well, what am I doing right now to create that? So you need to, you know, depending on what type of real estate you want to get in, depending on which, you know, is it commercial? Is it residential? Is it, you would want to find a mentor or somebody, or take a course. You know, I'm not going to recommend one right now because there's so many out there. But you know, that would be your first goal, is like figure out how to do it. Like, don't just try to wing it yourself. Like, find the right way to do it, and find a place that's reputable and been recommended, and have them kind of walk you through the process. And then it's ideal to have a mentor that can help you along the way. So as you're doing deals and stuff, you're getting real-time advice.
Hmm. Great, great. Will, looking at you, some people might say you are an overnight success, but we all know you went through several hurdles to get to where you are today. What would you say is one of the most challenging time that you probably wanted to, or that would have made you given up, but you didn't? You still pressed on and got to where you wanted to get to.
Yeah, I mean, that being in college when I kind of hit my rock bottom bounce and being in that tough space, and then reading that book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, that was a huge catalyst. It sort of shifted my trajectory. And then, I mean, there's a million tough, bad things that happen along the way. I mean, at one point when we started my doorstep delivery, the restaurant delivery service, we told somebody what our idea was, so that he could potentially partner up with us. And he basically stole our idea and opened up before we did. There's millions of those types of stories. We ended up in the end, we just kept pushing forward, and we said, okay, I believe in this idea. I know this is going to work. And we learned from our mistakes, no more doing things without NDAs with people, and everything we did, every mistake we made, we would just have to take that lesson, and it would sting and it would not feel good, but you just keep pushing forward. And that's what we did. And ultimately, I think our success came from just being able to keep pushing. Whereas I think most people get frustrated and they hit a hurdle, and they go, an obstacle. That's it. That's the third one this week. I'm out. Like, I'm going to go back to, my job or whatever it is that I'm not super satisfied. That's the mistake people make.
Yeah. So it's just the willpower to keep going on. Yes. Disappointments will come. I mean, they are parts of life. They are facts of life. So there's nothing we can do about it. But there's something you mentioned, that you believed in what you're doing. So once that belief is there, once that conviction is there, once you know your why, that should be the one that would keep you going. Thank you so much for that point. Is there any other major thing that you want to share with our audience regarding habits and momentum?
Yeah, I mean, just habits all start with action. So I have an equation of life that I want to share with people that I came up with. It's called it's your belief system plus your repeated actions plus time equals who you will become. And, it starts with that belief system, your mindset, like what are you taking action on? And then you're taking those actions. And if those actions are based on principles and the types of things that are going to lead to the good stuff in life, then you're in a good place. But if you're just taking them based on, I just want to be rich, or I just want to have, a short-term type thinking where you're not thinking about the big picture, then you get yourself into trouble. So your belief system, repeated actions, and then time comes in and does its thing. And it's a compounding effect. It's not going to happen overnight, but you take one step in front of another, and then eventually that's who you become.
Awesome. Thank you so much about that. Is there any such thing as a perfect mindset?
Is there any such thing as the perfect mindset? No. Okay. I mean, in general, nobody's perfect and everybody's going to have issues, but I mean, the ideal mindset that you want, like I said earlier, is that growth owner type mindset where you just look at life as a challenge, and that you've got to keep going and pushing through. And if you do fail and have obstacles, you need to figure out how to get around them. And don't let fear stop you in your tracks, because you can't gain momentum if you're not moving forward. Wow. Face your fear head on, and it's not easy, right? Because that's but you got to remember, it's your perception. That fear, oftentimes it's not nearly as scary as you think it is. It's just you built it up in your mind. And then once you push through it, you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. You got to take the action to begin with.
Yeah, and I saw a quote recently that got me really thinking. And the quote says that comfort is never profitable.
Mm. Yeah,
If you,
that's a really good one.
yeah, if you want to make it in life, you must leave your comfort zone.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's a good way to say kind of what I was just saying in one sentence, right? If you just don't
Yeah,
do anything,
yeah.
if you want to stay comfortable, then you're never gonna make any.
Yeah. Wow, I'm so delighted having you in this call. Is there any other thing you want to share with our audience out there?
Um, just remember when you're thinking about the action part, think a little Yoda, do or do not. There is no try, right? So it's not, oh, I don't come up with excuses why you're not doing things. Oh, I tried, but I had this come out, or I this, or just do it. Just take the action, learn, pivot, grow. You want to get into your success loop is what I call it. You get in there and you want to stay in there. And it's, you take action, you learn, you experiment, you grow from it, you gain a little bit of confidence. It makes you want to take more action. You take more action, you learn, you grow, and you're just doing this versus the failure loop, which is the opposite, which is you're not taking any action and you're scared and you're fearful and you're building negative momentum.
Wow. Awesome. That's great. That's great. Will, do you want to tell us a little bit about your projects that you're doing right now? Because when it comes out, I really want our audience, anyone watching this, to be prepared for that and then just dive in.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the app is like I described earlier. That's really the big project I'm working on. I've also got a book that's going to be coming out, but that's going to come out after the app. If you go onto my website, to moremomentum.com, as I said, with 2 O's, MOORE, momentum.com. And you go to, there's a Gamify Your Life tab at the top, and then there's a little app. You can see kind of a little bit more on the app, learn a little bit more about it. And then you can also pre-sign up for when the beta version is going to be ready. So you'll be notified, and it'll be free. So you'll be notified, and then we'll send you a link to download it to get going.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a wonderful time with Will Moore, and we can see all the golden nuggets that he has given to us regarding habits and how we can use habit to create momentum in our life. My name once more is James Egudibe, and I've been the host for this Wealth Metrics Virtual Summit. I challenge you to just go out there and make it. There's no such thing as failure. You just go in there and then you learn from your mistakes and then you move on. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.